what might have been a nice logo that made much sense at all. The Quebec Nordiques are the feature of this what if. Nothing to regret about the Colorado Avalanche. But anyway, let's give you the skinny on the Nordiques. The Nordiques were one of the original teams in the World Hockey Association from 1972 to 1979. They won a few AFCO Cups, or the WHA's version of our Stanley Cup, if you're an NHL fan, like myself. Anyway, Quebec had some very strong talent, a lot of French Canadian talent at that. Obviously, Quebec City is more francophone than Montreal is. Quebec City started out great. And they were happy to know they got an NHL expansion franchise in 79-80 alongside the other three teams. Quebec City ended up playing Calgary and tying them at 5 in their first game. But Real Cluche puts up a hat trick. Good news for Nordique fans. Quebec then, the next game would be in Montreal to take on the Canadiens. Canadiens easily won that one. Nordiques got their own back at home against the Canadiens at La Colisée. For the Nordiques, acceptance into the NHL wasn't as easy. But in their second year in 1981, they made waves. They made noise. They almost took out the Philadelphia Flyers in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But unfortunately, they fell in Game 7. Or was it a Game 5? I can't remember. I think it was Game 5, best of 5. But the Nordiques in 82 made some noise. Within the same division as Boston, Buffalo, Montreal, and Hartford. In the time that the divisional playoffs are, the top 4 teams from each division moving on to the playoffs. Quebec made a strong move. Their 1982 team wasn't much to be desired if you were an Anglophone like myself. But the 82 Nordiques hung on with the big boys. The 82 Canadiens looked good when the Nordiques took on the Habs in the first round of the playoffs. It took a Game 5. Remember, first round was best of 5 before 1987. When all of a sudden there was a scramble in front of Wick Walmsley in the net, and good old Dale Hunter tapped it in to the net. Dale Hunter was the hero for the Nordiques as they took care of the pesky Canadiens and went to the next round. Quebec would take on Boston in the second round and actually beat them in Game 7. In Boston, mind you. That must have been shocking enough. Anyway, the Nordiques went to the conference finals against New York Islanders, the two-time defending Stanley Cup champions. Sadly, though, they lost in 5 games, and the Islanders went on to win the Stanley Cup. But the Nordiques, that would have been amazing. You know, the ironic part was that if the Nordiques had, in fact, won the 1982 the Eastern Conference Finals, I call it, they would have faced Vancouver, and that was, of course, famous because Vancouver coach Harry Neal, yes, that Harry Neal, the analyst, actually ended up scaling Quebec City's glass for a fan who had been harassing Neal since the WHA days. It would have been funny to see the Canucks had to come back to Quebec City for the Stanley Cup final. But that's neither here or there. The Nordiques in 1984 had another rabbit at the hat, or so they thought. They were up 2-0 on the Canadiens in Game 6 of the division finals. One tiny little problem, though. There was something called La Bataille Saint-Fondeby, or the Good Friday Brawl, in which everyone went nuts. Almost every player on the Nordiques and Habs fought each other to submission. The worst part is that the referees completely boned it. And instead of telling both teams who was ejected from the game after that brawl, they had a second brawl. It took like 20 minutes to figure things out. Sadly for Quebec, the Habs would use this fight to their advantage, and they took care of the Nordiques and won Game 6. The Nordiques would get a better chance at playoffs and revenge on the Habs in 1985 in the conference finals. They took a big Game 7 into the Forum when good old Peter Stastny, one of the best scorers of all time, and thank God that Marcel Aubut and the Quebec Nordiques managed to get the Stastny brothers out of the Czech Republic. Scored the overtime winner in Game 7. Again, Montreal was pissed off. They lost in overtime in a key game at home to their provincial rivals. The Nordiques would give Philly a little bit of a fight, but not too much, as Quebec floundered in the conference finals. 86 was worse for Quebec. They got swept the fuck up by the Hartford Whalers. In the last series, those two teams will face each other as division rivals. And if memory serves me right, the only time the Whalers had / Carolina had a playoff series win for 16 years. Anyway, Quebec got swept. 87, they got revenge in the first round thanks to a Peter Schnashny overtime goal that you can't find any English stuff to it, but it was fan-fucking-tastic to hear. The Nordiques in 87 would take on the Habitants in the conference finals. Unfortunately, the Nordiques lost in 6 games, despite the fact that Montreal decided to go with Brian Hayward in the net more so than Patrick Roy, which is weird. But anyway, that was 87. And the Nordiques got robbed by a no-goal from Kerry Fraser that should have went in. The Nordiques would then slide completely off the face of the earth. No playoff appearances from that 87 series to 1993. In fact, they were terrible. Very terrible. They had 3 straight seasons. They were the worst team in the NHL. Well, the good news is they got Matt Sundin. They got Owen Nolan. And they could have had Eric Lindros if Lindros wasn't so stupid. It wasn't all Lindros' fault. It was the ultimate hockey helicopter parents, Bonnie and Carl Lindros, who basically berated coaches of the Big E if they think that Eric wasn't getting much time on the ice and all that. They basically forced Sault Ste. Marie's hand to trade him to Oshawa, even though he could have been Sault Ste. Marie Greyhound like Gretzky. Unfortunately, Quebec suffered. Their team sucked, and the league said, you have to do something about Lindros. If you don't want him, you have to trade his rights. So Quebec decided to trade his rights. Unfortunately, they screwed up by giving 2 trades to 2 teams within 90 minutes. The Philadelphia deal and the New York Rangers deal. Now, the Rangers actually got bidden. It was Lindros to Philadelphia. However, it actually worked out in the Rangers' favor, as it could have spelled the end of Tony Amonte, Doug Wade, and a few other players. Now, to wit, I know that Amonte, Wade, and Fred Biesberg were not on the 94 Rangers team that won the Cup, but they were actually traded away for key pieces. Doug Wade was traded away for Craig McTavish. Amonte was traded to Chicago for Brian Noonan and Stéphane Matteau. And Fred Biesberg was traded to Vancouver for the rights to, Vancouver for Doug Lister. So yeah, so the Rangers did come out on top after all. But the Nordiques made the trade with Philadelphia that sent up Peter Forsberg, who would then go on to win the Calder Trophy in 1995. And it was the 5th overall pick in 1990. Chris Simon, Kerry Huffman, Steve Duchesne, and Ron Hextall, among others. And of course, draft picks and money went the other way. But Ron Hextall in Quebec, gee, I didn't think that was going to work out. However, Quebec used that trade to their advantage in 93 and put on a monster show. Heck, they even took second in the Adams division. They were even better than the Habs. So, for once, the Nordiques actually had home ice advantage in a series against the Canadiens. And they used it to their advantage. Scott Young scored an overtime goal in Game 1, and then Quebec won Game 2. It was 2-0 for the Nordiques. And people were actually calling for Demers to start Rasico for Montreal instead of Padiwa. But Demers went with his gut. And a few overtime wins later, as well as a unbelievable hat trick from little-known player Paul DiPietro. The Nordiques were ousted in 6 games. They thought they had the advantage. Sadly, though, that would be the last time the Nordiques and Habs would face during the playoffs. 94 Nordiques fell flat, but they did get Wendell Clark. They traded Matt Sundin to get Wendell Clark, among others. It was a sad deal for the Leafs, but it actually worked out in Toronto's favor. Thank you very much. In 1994-95, the Nordiques had to deal with the stupid strike. Oh yeah, this is the year of the first major strike to affect a season. I know that people say in 1992 there was a strike that almost hit the NHL playoffs hard. But I mean, 94-95, the start of the season was delayed till January the 20th. But Quebec didn't mind. Quebec and Pittsburgh were in a dogfight, to say the least, for first place in the Northeast Division. And Quebec won out, despite the fact they didn't have Hackstall because they traded him to, I believe, the Islanders for some players. It was just amazing to see that the Quebec Nordiques were going to win the Stanley Cup, if you will. Unfortunately, though, the 95 season would become a cross to bear. I'll get more on that later. But anyway, everyone knows that the Quebec Nordiques then went to Colorado for 95-96 and started out well. And in 96, they shocked everyone by knocking the Detroit Red Wings out of the playoffs in 6 games. And literally, when Darren McCarty was knocked out literally by Claude Lemieux. Lemieux served a 2-game suspension, but that wasn't good enough for Detroit. Basically, they said, I can't believe we shook that guy's hand. That pisses me off. I get it, Cicerelli. I get it. But anyway, the Avalanche did pretty well in 96. They had a decent team. They had a lot of leftovers from Colorado. They did get Claude Lemieux in a trade from the Devils. Well, Lemieux actually won a Stanley Cup with the Devil Dogs in 95. It's like, what? So anyway, the Nordiques were missing a key piece, a star goalie. And thankfully, due to a dust-up in Montreal between coach and player, Patrick Roy was available. Roy was traded to Colorado alongside Captain Mike Keane for Valery Kamensky, Andrei Kovalenko, and Jocelyn Tebow. Stéphane Fiset was kept on as the backup because they needed a reliable backup. Of course, Pierre Lacroix was the GM of the Avalanche, and he knew Patrick Roy because he used to be Patrick Roy's agent. Now, of course, Roy was traded to Colorado, but they would never have traded Roy to Quebec City if Quebec was still around. They probably would have traded him to another Western Conference team, maybe Detroit, maybe St. Louis, maybe Toronto. No, doubt it. Toronto was still decent. Regardless, the Avalanche did well. In 97, the Avalanche got to the conference finals, but Detroit was there for revenge for 96, and they did it. Colorado in 98 choked on a ham sandwich. They were up 3-1 on the Edmonton Oilers in the first round, and the Oilers, thanks to Cujo's great performances, including that famous oversliding save that he overslid, and then somehow he managed to get the puck off. I think it was Rene Corbet. I can't remember. That big save in Game 7 in Denver. Colorado would have another disastrous campaign in the 99. Lost to the Dallas Stars in the conference finals. But 2 years later, they got back on track. Buoyed by the pickup of Ray Bourque. The Avalanche went to work in 2001. They were actually put on the back burner potentially by the Los Angeles Kings. The Kings were up 3-2. People forget about that. And with Peter Forsberg out with a ruptured spleen, which is not good, Colorado looked lost. But thankfully, Patrick Roy did his job and won that series. The Avalanche would take on the Devils in the 2001 Stanley Cup Finals, which went to 7 games. It was a massive, magical moment. Seeing Ray Bourque raising the Stanley Cup after 22 years of trying, and also a unknown Alex Tanguay. Or was it Hayduke? No, I think it was Tanguay with 2 goals in that game. I know Alex Tanguay scoring 2 goals in Game 7 of the 2001 Stanley Cup Finals. So anyway, the Avalanche won the Cup. 2002, the Wings demolished them 7-0 in a Game 7. Colorado in 2003 looks good, but somehow, in some way, they let a 3-1 series lead slip away to the Minnesota Wild. And worst of all, Patrick Roy decided to use this time to call it quits, putting David Abershire as the goalie for the Avalanche. The Avalanche really suffered without a star goalie, if you will. They've only had a few good hits and misses and all that. And in 2014, not that I want to brag, but I predicted that Minnesota was somehow going to beat Colorado in 7 games, even though Colorado won the division. I'm like, somehow, in some way, Minnesota is probably going to get the repeat of 2003. And lo and behold, when Nino Niederreiter scored that goal, I was right. I was like, freaky. Of course, this coming from the same guy who predicted the Sharks to beat the LA Kings and suffer massively when the Sharks blew a 3-0 series lead. Funny enough, that was the only first round series I blew. I made every other prediction correctly in the first round that year. But anyway, Colorado's doing decently now with Nathan McKinnon and Kitchener's own Gabe Landeskog. So let's talk about the 95 Nordiques. They were hot as hell. They were number one in the Eastern Conference, which was good. They took on the weak, like sort of weak, 1985 New York Rangers. Of course, the Rangers were coming off their Stanley Cup winning season, and Mike Keaton being a piece of shit, if you will. The Rangers recovered to take 8th place. They took on the Nordiques. The Nordiques won a late goal by Joe Sakic in Game 1. And we're like, here we go, Quebec looks good. And then the Rangers, for some reason, used Glenn Healy in the net, and it worked. The Rangers won that series in 6 games. Worst news to come later was that the Avalanche, that a new group in Denver called the ComSat, took the rights to the Nordiques. So Quebec City sold their team to Denver. Well, you know about the stupid Canadian dollar in the mid-90s. You would understand. But this was just a big blow. 96 would also give a Canadian blow as the Jets went left for Phoenix. More on that when the Coyotes come up. So it's a matter, I imagine myself, what if the 95 Nordiques actually did well enough to do well? Now, to explain the Stanley Cup playoff format in 95 is that, 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7, 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5. And then each round, they're reseeded. So anyway, Quebec is the 1 seed, lost to New York Rangers. So the Rangers, in real life, took on Philadelphia and got swept, whereas New Jersey took on Pittsburgh and beat them in 5 games. Now, New Jersey, in this format, would be the only Eastern Conference team to win against the better seed. Thus, New Jersey would take on number 1 Quebec, while Flyers and Penguins would play each other. As the Flyers were number 2, Penguins were number 3, Nordiques number 1, and that was number 5. So 1 versus 5, 2 versus 3. So Philadelphia would take on Pittsburgh. For the purposes of this thing, Philadelphia was going to go to the conference finals. So let's just say that Philly defeats Pittsburgh. It will deal with whoever comes out of it, Quebec or New Jersey. It would be nice to see if Quebec beats the Devils in the playoffs and then take on the Flyers and see Peter Forsberg and Eric Lindros playing against each other's teams that they got drafted from. Of course, for prosperity's sake, we do leave the Western Conference alone. So Detroit will deal with the winner of the Eastern Conference in the finals. So let's see if Quebec City becomes a happy town. So the 95 Devils and the 95 Nordiques. 30, 13, and 5. Not bad for 48-game schedule. So Stéphane Fiset gets the nod in Game 1 against Marty Brodeur. Now remember, the Devils got a few big shutouts of Boston in Boston Garden. And the Nordiques proved their worth by winning 7-2. Set a deux, if you will. The Nordiques scored 4 goals in the first period. Kamensky, Nolan, Kovalenko. Boy, Kamensky and Kovalenko didn't help the Habs at all in the watch rate. Devils got Steven Richer scoring a goal. Well, Quebec, Curtis Linchin scored a goal to knock Brodeur out of the net. Peter Forsberg then put one in, 6-1. And it was 7-1 on another goal, a power play goal by Forsberg after Guerin went to the box for charging. Neil Broaden made it 7-2. Torrey was decent, but not too decent. Forsberg, Nolan, and Young are your 3 stars of the game. Game 2 sees nothing really, except for the fact that less goals were scored, 4-1. Nordiques score on Nolan Uwe Krupp. Forgot he played for the 95 Nordiques. When Chris McAlpine being called in the box for holding. Peter Forsberg and Andrei Kovalenko. Tommy Abilene scored for the Devils. Forgot he was still with that team. Brodeur was not that big, even though he was in Quebec City. Nolan, Fise, Clark are your stars. Talk about the 1995 Nordiques. See some names that don't. Stephen Finn. I'm surprised he was still there. Martin Rushinsky. Yeah, that's right. I remember that. Claude Lapointe. Yeah, Rushinsky. He wasn't sent to the Habs in that trade. Kovalenko and Kaminsky. Or was it Rushinsky? Maybe it was Rushinsky, not Kaminsky. No, wait. Claude Lapointe. Paul McDermott, Chris Simon, Sylvain Lefebvre. Look at the Devils from '95. It's like Chris McAlpine, Bruce Driver. Bruce Driver was still there. Mike Peluso, Alex Seabeck, Denton Cole. Who the hell are those guys? So we head to Devil Country, Continental Airlines, and unfortunately for the Nordiques, they lose on the road. Stéphane Richer scored to make it 1-0. Then another goal, 2-0. Nolan scored with Danica in the box. Sergei Breland and Tom Sharsky. So Brodeur gets a much better game at home. Not one of the stars. That's Richer, Broden, and Charsky. So at 2-1, the Nordiques try again, but lose en prolongation. Good first period. 4 goals combined. Nolan and Forsberg for the Nords. Broden, Driver for the Devil Dogs. Scott Young made it 3-2, but a third period power play goal by Tom Sharsky tied it up. And then Claude Lemieux sunk the Quebec team with a goal by him from Broden and Stibbons. Broden, Brother, and Scott Young are your stars. 2-2 tie, headed back to Quebec. They decide to keep Stéphane Fise because he's 2-0 on home turf. And it worked. 6-3. Clark and Kaminsky scored for the Habitants. I mean, for the Nordiques. What am I thinking? John McLean scored on the power play on a penalty from Mike Ricci. So McLean made it 2-1. Paul McDermott made it 3-1 Nordiques. Wendell Clark made it 4-1. John McLean made it 4-2. Scott Young scored at 8:55 in the third period. Brodeur gets replaced. Sakic scores, and then Tom Sharsky scores. 6-3. So Toronto only faces 9 shots in net. Clark, Sakic, McLean are your 3 stars of the game. On to game 6. Brodeur knows what he has to do. And the trend is over. The home team lost 3-2 to the Nordiques. Kovalenko, Nolan, and Sakic scored to make it 3-0. Breland and Tommy Abilene scored, but it was too little too late. 3-2. Brodeur did decent, but Stéphane Fise stood on his head. 36 saves. He was the first star. Nolan and Sakic second and third stars. So the Nordiques are jubilant. They will now have to take on the Philadelphia Flyers of the '95 season. I always seem to get everything mixed up somehow in some way. So Ron Hextall. So there, Haller and Chris Terrian. I don't think Chris Terrian was that good. Desjardins. So Haller and Desjardins with Lindros, Leclerc, and Burke. So let's see at the Flyers. Ron Hextall is returning to Quebec. Lindros is returning, kind of, to Quebec. Eric Desjardins returning to Quebec, but as a member. But he wasn't a Nordique. He was a Habitant. And the Flyers were not prepared for an 8-0 thumping. Nolan, Young, Ricci, and Joe Sakic putting goals in. The important thing is that Forsberg being a Flyers draft pick, and Mike Ricci was also a Flyer draft pick. He was also in that trade. That Eric Lindros trade. People forget about that. Hextall is pissed off. Not as much as he will be after 2 periods. After Ricci scored to chase him at 5-0, and then Joe Sakic scored to make it 6-0. Sakic gets the hat trick late in the period. Craig Llewellyn made it 7-0, by the way. 7 goals on 49 shots, I think? Something like that. 8 goals on 49 shots. That's amazing. Russo was not as good as Hextall would probably be. Hextall gave up 5 goals on 17 shots. Man, Fusay was just El Perfecto. The Flyers are 95. Kevin Haller, yeah, I've talked about him, 93 Habitons. Dave Brown was still around that time. Dmitry Yuskevich before he went to the Leafs. Sean Antosky? Who the hell is he? Rob DeMaio? Joseph Baranek? Brett Fedek? Ryan McGill? Sean Podine? Sakic? Nolan? Fusay, the 3 stars of the game. I feel bad for Fusay not being the first star of the game, even though he got a shutout against the Flyers. Well, he did decent in game 2, excuse me. Rod Brindamore scores to break up the shutout streak in like more than 5 periods. Olin Nolan scored, make it 1-0. It was 1-1. Then Ricci scored a pair of goals, including an empty netter. And then Claude Lapointe scored for the Nordiques to make it 4-1. Fusay's just on fire. 2nd star behind Mike Ricci. Lecision, the 3rd star. Okay, that's fine. So it's 2-0 Quebec coming home to the Flyers. When all of a sudden the Nordiques win the game 6-4. It's like, what? How? Well, 3 quick goals. Sean Antosky got ejected for a major elbowing call. Kamensky, Clark, and Landon made it 3-0. Then Renberg scored to make it 3-1 Flyers. Okay, no problem. But Olin Nolan struck it back 4-1. Chris Terry made it 4-2, which is fine. But unfortunately, Scott Young scored the goal to make it 5-2. Chase Hextall from the net. Flyers do score 2 quick ones later, Renberg and Leclerc, but Scott Young iced it with a 6-4 goal. Russo only faced 7 shots. Young, Renberg, and Kamensky are your 3 stars of the game. Quebec has a chance to sweep the Flyers, which they do. Are you serious? 5-3. They sweep them. The Flyers had a 2-1 lead. Brindamore and Fedek. And then all of a sudden, the Nordiques scored 2. Clark and Sakic made it 2-2. Kevin Dineen made it 3-2 for the Flyers, but then Olin Nolan made it 3-3. Scott Young made it 4-3, and then a few minutes later, Olin Nolan's goal chased Hextall from the net. And the Flyers had nothing after that. Flyers were really heartbroken, despite outshooting the Nordiques 19-5 in the 2nd period. Russo was great in net. Stefan Fusay was just that much better. Nolan, Sakic, Clark are your 3 stars of the game. It's hard to believe. But now you got to deal with the Detroit Red Wings. I remember the Red Wings scored more points. So that's why they're the 1 seed, if you will. So I got to do some work. Fedorov, Yzerman, Cicerelli, Coffey, Constantino. Makes sense. So they decided to go with Mike Fernan for 95. That's why the Red Wings got him for playoff testing. And game 1 goes Quebec's way. Yikes, 5-3. Fedorov scored to make it 1-0. Then Sakic scored. Then Keith Primo made it 2-1. Scott Young and Wendell Clark put up goals for the Nordiques 3-2. Nothing in the 2nd. 3rd period, Stephen Finn, the longest serving Nordique, I think, scored and made it 4-2. Steve Yzerman made it 4-3, whereas Joe Sakic put one in the net to make it 5-3. Looking at Detroit's lineup. Terry Karkner, Sean Burr, Mike Ramsey, Bob Rouse, Bob Erie, Mike Kruszynatsky, Stu Grimson. Wow. Fusay and Fernan, they really had to stop the pucks. Sakic, Clark, Nolan are your 3 stars for the Nordiques. They didn't really need Jocelyn Thibault, after all. Once I say that, I knew something was fishy. Detroit was getting revenge with a 7-4 win. Kovalenko scored to make it 1-0. Then Olin Nolan made it 2-0 for 13 minutes, but Primo and Erie made it 2-2. Paul Coffey gets a power play goal after Landon goes off for roughing and make it 3-2. Steve Yzerman makes it 4-2. Nick Lindstrom made it 5-2. And Fusay is chased from the net. Sergei Fedorov makes it 6-2. Scott Young made it 6-3. Ray Shepard puts one on the board 7-3. Kamensky made it 7-4. Chris Simon gets an ejection for cross-checking. So Tebow proves very well. Coffee, Lidstrom, Kamensky are your 3 stars of the game. So on to La Belle Provence. And the Red Wings prove their worthiness. It was like, well, Quebec's going to win for sure. I know. Cicerelli made it 1-0. Konstantinov made it 2-0. And with Finn and Foot on the books as being penalized, Fetisov scored a power play goal to make it 3-0. And then Cicerelli scored another power play goal to make it 4-0. Nick Lidstrom made it 5-1 after a Sakic goal. Chase Visse. Keith Primo made it 6-1. Ray Shepard made it 7-1. Amazing. Nordiques do put up a pair of goals later. Wendell Clark and Peter Forsberg, but all said and done, nothing works. Tebow is okay, but Cicerelli, Primo, Coffee are all the stars. Karkner got injured, but he's okay. So down 2-1, they're going to take a gamble on Tebow. Might as well take a gamble. And the gamble pays off. 4-1 Nordiques. Olenoli made it 1-0. Keith Primo made it 1-1, and then Olenoli made it 2-1. And then Nolan scored the natural hat trick on a goal 5 minutes 53 into the third period. Curtis Lecision made it 4-1. So the Nordiques win game 4. Tebow beats Ferdin, Nolan, Tebow, Sakic, the 3 stars. So I guess Jocelyn Tebow is the answer. They said they wanted to ride him into game 5. After all, I mean, maybe the Red Wings foul it up or something. And they do. Quebec wins 4-3 in overtime. Mike Ricci scored the first goal. Dino Cicerelli made it 1-1. Paul Coffey made it 2-1. I'm thinking, okay, the Red Wings are definitely going to win. But Scott Young made it. Oh, a shootout. Did I not make it as a playoff? Scott Young. Paul Coffey made it 3-2, and then Olin Nolan tied the game 5 minutes in. Bob Beery got penalized. I don't know why I made it a shootout. I guess I didn't think that it would go more than one overtime. Tebow beats Ferdinand. Coffey the first star. Tebow the second star. Scott Young the third star. Damn. I can't believe I didn't make it playoff. I guess because I thought that couldn't happen. Regular season, all that means shootouts. Okay, but anyway, game 6, Ferdinand versus Tebow. La Belle Provence gagne the Coupe Stanley. I kind of figured that might as well make it Avalanche. Cicerelli scored to make it 1-0. Mike Ricci made it 1-1. Kamensky made it 2-1. Ray Shepard tied the game at 2. And Sergei Fedorov made it 3-2. You're thinking, well, game 7. It looks like they'll have to go back to Stefan Vise. But no. 2 minutes 39, Ricci make it 3-3. At 14:41, Nolan puts the puck from Clark and Sakic. Kamensky scores the winning goal 5-3. Rushinsky gets an unsportsmanlike contact penalty, but it doesn't matter. Mike Ferdinand loses to Jocelyn Tebow. Jocelyn Tebow was the man for the 95 Nordiques at the right time. Kamensky, Fedorov, Ricci are the stars of the game. I think you got to give Joe Sakic the MVP, or maybe Ricci, but man, yeah. So the Nordiques are the 1995 Stanley Cup champions, so they would have got their revenge on everybody. Sweeping the Flyers was good enough, but they sent the Red Wings home. I actually want to know if they would have won that game. Yeah, they actually said that they probably would have won the game. Okay, so the Nordiques would have won that game 5 anyway. So, yeah, man, Jocelyn Tebow, when he was given a chance, he stepped up to the plate. And the plate went up to him. Nordiques would have had a Stanley Cup. And maybe Colorado would not have had a Stanley Cup. Maybe the Nordiques would have stayed in Quebec. Maybe for one more year. Who knows? Who cares?